A statue of Nelson Mandela now stands in the international terminal of the world's busiest airport. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens helped bring the piece home after a recent visit to South Africa. He says it stands as a symbol of the city's growing partnership with the country and reflects Atlanta's role as a global gateway. During yesterday's event, he expressed the similarities of movements we've seen grow here and in South Africa alike.
In Johannesburg, I was reminded how both cities have been shaped by movements that inspired people all over the world, how Atlanta and Johannesburg have done that. The launching of a civil rights movement here and the dismantling of apartheid there.
The ceremony also kicked off Gates to Goals, the airport's first World Cup themed experience for travelers.